It is important that the framework can align with and support the Hub's annual cycle of work so that using it can be as efficient as possible. By that, we mean it should align with and be informed by the Hub's needs analysis and self-evaluation. For example, by thinking about the timing for using the framework and when that might best flow from the learning you derive from needs analysis and self-evaluation activities. Using the framework should inform the Hub's next set of developmental priorities, objectives, and programme of activity. Your objectives should pick up any areas for development or improvement that you plan to be addressing and monitoring throughout the year ahead. Using the framework should support the monitoring of progress against objectives and any areas for improvement. The performance framework should be monitored and reviewed annually, so each year, as you reflect again on the criteria, you'll be able to think about the journey you're on and the progress you've made. It's important that Hubs can identify where improvement or development is needed and are empowered to address this in a clear and manageable way. Where multiple areas need addressing, the Hub lead organisation will determine priorities and plan tasks appropriately, and the Arts Council's Relationship and Development Managers, or RDMs, can support this. In the feedback we received from Hubs during the pilot year, we heard that the relationship between the Arts Council's risk assessment and performance is still often misunderstood. So we have highlighted this within the framework document. It's important that there is regular communication between RDMs and Hubs to help ensure a shared understanding of a Hub's performance and discuss any potential concerns about how performance might impact risk assessment. The 3 steps set out on this slide are detailed further in the guidance document itself and will feel familiar from the previous framework. A key change, however, is around the interaction with your RDM. Previously, this was at the end of the process, with the RDM reviewing ratings once they were submitted to the Arts Council. Instead, the conversation about performance should be a more collaborative one, led by the Hub lead organisation and involving Hub partners, Hub board, and the RDM to help with determining ratings as set out in step 1, so they can be based on a collective understanding of the needs and Hub activity across the Hub area. RDMs can also support Hub lead organisations with using the framework. When determining ratings, this should involve reviewing the criteria within each performance area and should draw on the Hub's knowledge, experience, and discussions. This might include reviewing written strategies or documents, discussing approaches, and understanding the impact your work is having. This process is likely to involve senior leaders in the Hub, but also wider partners, for example, consortium members where applicable, and other members of the workforce. The Hub lead organisation should take time to plan how they'll use the framework with their Hub, so that they are then in a position to share performance ratings and information with the Hub board. The board will review and approve ratings as set out in step 2. Step 3 sets out that ratings are then to be submitted to the Arts Council as part of the Hub lead organisation's September reporting. This will be done using Grantium, where you'll need to input a rating against each performance area. This will then be used in our programme reporting to the Department for Education. A template is provided which we recommend can be a useful tool for sharing information with your Hub board and RDM. It provides space to set out your ratings and any supporting summary information about how you arrived at the ratings, if there are any other points to highlight or actions to note. The template has space to log ratings against each performance area as well as against each individual criterion, should you prefer to reflect on ratings at this more granular level. Alongside these steps, there will be opportunities to engage in further discussion, to hear from your peers and generally to build a broad conversation about performance across the Hub network. There will be benchmarking sessions in May this year, and then further peer learning drop-ins in the summer term. Your RDM can help with suggesting other hubs for you to talk to from across the country, and can signpost case studies and examples to help support you in using the framework. Looking now at the ratings that should be used. As mentioned earlier, we have moved away from using the word ratings that were developing, emerging, engaging, and stretching, and instead now have a scale of 1 to 5, using a best fit approach where there is variance in performance across a hub area. Feedback on the pilot framework showed a desire for more nuance in the rating scale, so that hubs can demonstrate and celebrate progress. Also, many felt the word ratings weren't easily or consistently understood. Within the working group, we considered a number of different approaches and scales, arriving here on a number scale with word descriptors to explain what each number rating represents. Looking at the scale, 1 represents where criteria are not being met or only just starting to be developed. 5 is the top and represents criteria being fully met with strong consistency across the whole hub area. Ratings 2, 3, and 4 represent the different stages of development between 1 and 5, with how well criteria being met and the degree of consistency across the hub area. The previous top level of stretching was felt to be variable and lacked consistency, with the criteria within it not strong enough and examples of stretching demonstrating pockets of good practice rather than consistently strong practice. There was also a sense that the top of the scale should not be about going beyond what is being set out in the criteria, particularly as the criteria already set a strong articulation of hub performance rather than a set of minimum expectations. The working group also discussed considerations around the new hub geographies. For example, in some of the areas with the most change, it is likely there will be variable performance, and we wanted the scale to reflect this and give opportunity to celebrate where there is a strong approach in an area, even if it isn't consistently across the new area. Any strong features of your performance can be captured in your summary notes within the template, shared with your RDM, and where possible, shared more widely with other hubs so that we can grow our collective understanding of what works well. At the Arts Council, we intend to do more to capture and share case studies and exemplars, and we'll share more on how we'll do this in the coming months. A significant piece of feedback from hubs during the pilot year was around a need for consistency in how each hub was using the framework and understanding the criteria and ratings. In refreshing the criteria wording, we hope we've addressed some of the specific points around this, and more generally, that through regular discussion, peer learning and benchmarking, we can build a shared understanding of performance. This will include discussing and sharing what the criteria mean and what good looks like in practice. By having a consistent understanding of performance, we will be able to improve as a sector and can help hub lead organisations to draw on realistic understanding and ambition for improvement. It will take time to build this shared understanding, and the focus for the rest of this year is to start those conversations and start to surface what each criteria looks like in practice. One way to do this is through benchmarking discussions, which will take place in May. For these sessions, we will meet in small groups to discuss and share how hub lead organisations have arrived at different ratings, the steps being taken, the things being considered, and compare and contrast this with others. We'll share back learning from these sessions with the whole hub network. The RDMs will also be seeing practice from across a whole region and will be able to share this learning with each other as well as with hubs. Alongside your existing routes for peer learning, the Arts Council will facilitate some peer learning sessions in the summer term, including for hub chairs. We're also exploring the possibility of using an online digital platform for all hub leader organisations to use and to be able to share informally with each other. Details on how to sign up for any of the sessions will be shared in our emails to you and on our website.
So the working group have spent a great deal of time devising how to make this framework as streamlined as it possibly can. So as an example for My Hub, the way we're planning to use this framework will be to fully embed it within our existing cycle of needs analysis, and then also to focus those conversations at board level as well. It really makes sense to align this framework to our wider planning and also our SMART targets, just so that we can ensure that strategic objectives and then the subsequent programme of activity are informed by real data and ongoing reflections on our performance. So one of the topics that I really want to explore here as a group, I guess, would be how we determine performance ratings as individual hubs. So for example, for me, I'd say one of the most valuable aspects of the framework is that it really helps us to reflect upon performance across the entire hub area, rather than those individual geographies that sit within it. So the best fit approach for me really enables us to be able to consider variation across that wider region, especially at the moment through this period of transition. It is just so important. So I'm going to come to you, Paul, first, just to really share your reflections on how you're going to get started using the framework.
Thanks, Alison. I think the most important thing for me is that we talked a lot about how the criteria would be applied, and the fact that we're adopting a best fit model rather than a threshold model. And that enables us, as you say, and particularly in my area where we've got what were two large hub areas coming together, not dissimilar to yours, that we're able to look at both our strengths and our areas for development across the piece and acknowledge the levels of variation there in a positive way.
One of the beauties of this new framework is it forces us to look at consistency of application, of whether it's rollout of programs, whether it's the implementation of policies. We've always known that we've had those things. We've always known that they were inconsistently applied across the two hubs that in fact we were running before. But now we're looking at it as a single entity. This performance framework raises questions of why is it different? And what do we need to do to put that right and to right an inequality across the hub area? And I suspect for our partners who have more complex geographies than the three of us, that will be even more true.
If we look at timing, I think for me, this performance framework very much sits between our sort of wider needs analysis work and then informing our SMART objectives for the entire year. So essentially it will be co-created with partners, our RDM, obviously the hub board, and also the families that we work with. So I kind of think a good time for us to do it's in the summer, really, because that is when we have the most opportunity to sort of interact with that wider matrix of people, partners, have the opportunity to co-create things and then be able to put things in place for September. I very much see it as part and parcel of what we're already doing.
One of the things that the Arts Council and the working group were very keen to do was to make sure that this framework has those genuine interactions with its inputs and its outputs, so that it's designed not to be another big document that we have to do, but it actually creates a seamless process through that cyclical self-evaluation that enables us to really look at our needs in a more diagnostic way and drive the targets out from that. And it becomes something really then that rather than create more stuff to do, should actually help with workload, because it creates a level of coherence. And as you said, Peter, creates those discussions, which are the most important thing, particularly across partners where we are in new hub areas where there are consortia of previous hub lead organisations who may all have their different views about things. I think this sort of a framework that is driven by conversation and a focus on a whole range of different areas will enable people to get to know each other better, which I think is really crucial, and B, share those experiences and really engage in some peer learning, which as we know is what drives development in the best way anyway.
Yeah, and I think, Paul, I really agree with you there in terms of the structure of this, the redesigning of the framework, because actually it's helping us to shape these discussions, these new discussions with people that we might not potentially have worked with previously. And then that's then developing a sort of shared understanding of our key priorities and also our challenges as a region. So across the year, I very much see this as shaping those wider discussions. Also, when we get to the point of impact, with advisory boards, with executive boards, and also with the wider partnership matrix. So if we're looking then, I think we're all quite clear around this best fit approach, and it's something that we're really sort of keen on. Paul, do you just want to talk us through what that best fit sort of looks like?
I think it's an idea that's been around for a long time, and it's about then looking at what sits underneath a criteria and making a joint judgment, as it were, with the people around the table as to where that sits within the rating. And I think, coming back to the point that that's then driven by discussion and potentially debate about where it sits, and people being able to express what they feel it should be in order to come to a best fit judgment. The big difference is where you have threshold judgments, where everyone within a consortium or every aspect of what's within that criteria or that performance area has to be hit in order to give it a rating of 3 or 4 or whatever it is, can leave things out is the main potential, and it can create a situation where a judgment is made lower than it should be or higher than it should be because it's not able to flex in a way that a best fit judgment can. Just to say, I think the other advantage of a best fit model is that you're able to synthesize various different forms of data, both qualitative and quantitative. We do lots of numbers for our annual report, so to have a performance framework that can reflect on those numbers, but is still also gains strength from using qualitative data as well from across the hub area, I think is really important.
And there's a move as well within the new framework to involve RDMs in this, certainly far earlier, which I personally think is a really positive change. So they're already, I mean, I don't know if you're noticing this either, but already that sort of regional and then wider national perspective as well is helping. So it's helping me because I'm gaining some insight into what the trends are across the area. It's extremely supportive model.
Another thing in this first year, which is for those of us who are changing RDMs at this time, this will be the first piece of work that we do with our new relationship and development manager. And so this will be the first thing which we're doing collaboratively with them, which gives it even more significance.
And I'm also really quite excited as well about the fact that our RDMs are then able to broker further connections, so peer learning as well, because actually for such a long time across the sector there's been a lot of working in silos, working on our own, and that's just going to be a real opportunity for us here, I think, to get that support network back again. And I know certainly I'd really personally value that as well.